Have you ever felt like your own family has turned a blind eye to you? It's a subtle and slow-building hurt, especially when it comes from those you've cared for and stood by for many years. The most infuriating part of this experience, trying to express your anger or frustration, often makes things even worse. The more you raise your voice, the more they seem to ignore you. The more you try to explain your feelings, the more you see them roll their eyes in disbelief. So, what steps can you take when respect seems to vanish from your family interactions? But you're not quite ready to walk away from those relationships. In today's discussion, we're going to dive into a topic that many might shy away from. We'll explore how to respond when your family disrespects you without resorting to anger, begging, or losing your sense of identity. We're going to share 7 strategies that focus on reclaiming your power in quiet and steady ways. These methods can change how others perceive and treat you, and most importantly, they can transform how you feel about yourself. Stick with us until the end, as the final strategy we'll discuss might be the most impactful one of all. It has the potential to change not just your family dynamics, but how you carry yourself in every relationship throughout your life. If you've ever felt belittled, overlooked, or diminished by those closest to you, then this video is tailored just for you. So let's jump right in. The first approach we recommend is creating emotional distance to command respect. Many individuals instinctively react when they feel disrespected by family, often by explaining their feelings, pleading for understanding, or getting angry. However, these reactions seldom work in your favor. In fact, they often reinforce the very behavior you're trying to change. What truly begins to alter the dynamic is practicing a quieter, more deliberate form of emotional distance. Now, don't misunderstand this idea. It doesn't mean cutting ties or becoming cold-hearted. Instead, it involves stepping back just enough to stop seeking their approval and instead prioritize your own peace of mind. When a family member speaks over you, dismisses your advice, or treats your kindness like an obligation, it's natural to want to fix the situation. However, trying to mend something that is not valued becomes a one-sided effort. Emotional distance allows others to feel the absence of your presence while you still remain in the picture. It might look like not responding immediately when they contact you, or choosing not to extend help when it's taken for granted. You maintain your kindness, politeness, and calm demeanor, but you no longer go out of your way to overextend yourself. This subtle shift communicates a stronger message than any confrontation could ever achieve. For example, let's consider the story of a man named Thomas, who was 78 years old. Thomas used to drive his daughter and her children around town for appointments, errands, and anything they needed. He never complained, but over time, they began to assume he would always be there for them without expressing gratitude. When he finally brought up how he felt, they laughed it off, labeling him as overly sensitive. So Thomas decided to take a simple but effective action. He stopped offering his help. He didn't argue or make a fuss. He simply returned to his own routine. It didn't take long for his family to notice his absence, and more importantly, to ask for his help with a renewed sense of respect. This kind of emotional boundary isn't about being cold or withholding affection. It's about realizing that love given without limits often becomes invisible. When you're always giving without any expectation of return, people may forget to appreciate what you do. Therefore, the best thing you can do, particularly if you've been overgiving for years, is to gently shift the burden back onto them. Allow them to reach out to you. Let them wonder where your energy went. That pause in your efforts may very well be the thing that sparks their appreciation for your contributions. Additionally, it's vital to recognize what emotional distance does for you. It provides you with the space to breathe. It allows you to clearly see your own worth, independent of their reactions. Once you begin living from that perspective, rather than from a place of frustration or the desire to please others. You start to embody a sense of quiet self-respect. As a result, you become someone whom others naturally begin to treat differently. Not because you demanded it, but because you've made it harder for them to overlook you. Sometimes, the strongest message you can convey is delivered through silence, especially in moments of disrespect. When a family member says something hurtful, dismissive, or sarcastic, your immediate instinct may be to defend yourself, snap back, or clarify their misunderstandings. However, here's the truth. Arguing in those moments doesn't make you appear stronger. It makes you seem rattled. When people witness that they can easily push your buttons, even unintentionally, they're less likely to take you seriously in the future. A far more effective method, albeit one that takes practice, is to employ silence, intentional and well-placed silence. This silence should not be viewed as a sign of weakness. Rather, it signals clarity. It communicates, "I heard what you said, and I'm choosing not to grant it power." This is particularly impactful in family dynamics where patterns run deep, as your silence can disrupt long-standing behaviors in a positive way. For instance, let's talk about Linda, a 74-year-old woman who faced teasing at every family dinner. They would mock her for being old-fashioned or accuse her of worrying too much. Initially, she laughed along to keep the peace, but it hurt her deeply. One year, she decided to stop laughing. Instead of responding, she simply held eye contact with the person who made the comment and then redirected her gaze elsewhere. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The teasing diminished, and eventually her family noticed her absence and missed her warmth, stories, and presence. This paradox of silence illustrates that sometimes, not saying anything at all becomes the loudest message in the room. This approach works best when paired with calm body language. Avoid eye-rolling, sighing, or making a dramatic exit. Instead, embrace stillness, take a brief pause, and then redirect your focus to your plate, a book, or a task that doesn't involve justifying yourself to someone who isn't ready to listen. You may feel tempted to fill the silence with a joke or a correction, but if you can hold that silence for just a few moments, you'll give yourself a chance to reconnect with your own strength. You'll stop playing the same old role and instead start standing in something new. While it may feel awkward at first, that discomfort is often a sign of growth. It's the sound of a pattern beginning to shift. Now, if you're still engaged with this video and finding these insights helpful, I'd love for you to comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do so and turn on notifications so you won't miss any valuable content. Your support is what drives us to continue creating meaningful content that informs and inspires you. Let's move on to our third point, which is about establishing small boundaries that create a significant impact. One of the most frequently overlooked methods to restore respect within a family is to start setting boundaries. The key is to do it quietly, calmly, and consistently. When people think of boundaries, they often envision dramatic speeches, prolonged arguments, or severing ties entirely. However, genuine boundaries don't need to be dramatic. They can be quiet lines drawn in the fabric of daily life. Once you start establishing these boundaries, even in small ways, you teach others how to treat you without ever having to raise your voice. Boundaries are less about what others do and more about what you choose to allow in your life. For instance, if your daughter calls late at night just to vent, leaving you feeling tense and unable to sleep, you might set a boundary by allowing the call to go to voicemail after 9 p.m. Or perhaps your son expects you to babysit at the drop of a hat without any expression of gratitude. A boundary in this situation could be simply stating, "I'm not available this weekend," without offering an explanation. Each of these choices send a clear message. Your time is valuable, your rest is important, and your peace of mind is not up for negotiation. Consider the case of Harold, an 81-year-old man who used to attend every family gathering. Even when they made him uncomfortable, he would endure arguments, tolerate backhanded comments, and leave feeling exhausted. But one year, he decided to RSVP no to an event without providing any explanation or apology. That small act of self-care sent ripples through his family. They began to notice his absence, not only physically but emotionally. They started to wonder, not with anger but with curiosity, what it would take for him to feel respected enough to return. The key to maintaining boundaries is follow-through. Don't just state your limits. Live by them. If you decide you won't be available at certain times, stick to that commitment. If someone speaks to you in a tone you no longer accept, calmly excuse yourself from that conversation and only return when the tone has shifted. Each instance of self-respect reinforces your boundaries, and over time, even the most dismissive family members will begin to sense that something has changed. Your time, energy, and presence are not guaranteed. They come with boundaries. Establishing boundaries also teaches you something crucial about yourself. They serve as a reminder that you're not powerless in the face of disrespect. You possess choices, options, and the inherent right to navigate your days with dignity, even when others may not offer it freely. As you begin to honor yourself in these small yet consistent ways, you'll find that you stop waiting for others to treat you well. You'll cease asking for permission to be respected. Instead, you'll begin demonstrating what that looks like simply by how you carry yourself. This kind of self-leadership often brings about a gradual yet lasting shift in family dynamics. Next, let's discuss actions that speak louder than any lectures. When faced with disrespect, especially from family, there's a natural inclination to explain, correct, or teach those who are dismissive. You might find yourself thinking, if I could just help them understand how much I've contributed, they'd treat me better. But far too often, those explanations fall on deaf ears. They get ignored, misinterpreted, or worse, thrown back at you. This is because when someone has already chosen not to respect you, your words lose their significance. What truly holds weight are your actions, particularly those that are steady, quiet, and unmistakable. People notice patterns, not speeches. They observe when you stop making the extra effort, when you cease reminding them to call, or when you quietly excuse yourself from conversations that cross the line. You don't need to announce what you're doing, simply take the action. And over time, they will begin to see you in a different light, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior compels a new level of attention. For example, let's consider Patricia, a 76-year-old woman who traditionally played the family peacemaker. She would step in whenever her kids had arguments and ensured that no one forgot a birthday. Unfortunately, over the years, her efforts were taken for granted. One year, she decided to try a different approach. Instead of lecturing her family, she simply stepped back. When no one planned a celebration for her own birthday, she didn't mention it. Instead, she spent that day happily with a neighbor. That single act, no drama, no guilt, transformed the entire dynamic. Her children began to realize how much she had been holding everything together. Not because she told them, but because they felt the absence of her contributions. The most effective way to communicate the need for respect is through modeling. When you demonstrate what dignity looks like by speaking calmly, withdrawing from toxic situations, and choosing to invest your time where it is appreciated, you teach others not through words, but through your actions. You don't need to justify why you're doing less or explain your boundaries. Those who truly matter will take note, while those who don't were never really listening in the first place. Here's the truth. When you cease trying to convince people to treat you with respect, you open up space to start living well, regardless of their reactions. You will no longer find yourself caught in the cycle of questioning. Why don't they see what I do? Instead, you can ask yourself, what else could I do with my energy today? That simple question, when asked consistently, shifts your focus from reacting to leading, not in the sense of directing others, but in taking charge of your own life. It's the kind of leadership that doesn't require raising your voice, but instead involves standing a little taller, speaking a little slower, and commanding attention without ever having to ask for it. If you're still tuned in and finding these insights useful, please comment number 4 below to share that you're still here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the bell icon for notifications. Your support is what keeps us motivated to create valuable content that enlightens and inspires you. Let's move on to our 5th strategy, establishing self-respect routines that shift how others view you. When you have spent years prioritizing the needs of others over your own and consistently showing up regardless of how you're treated, it can be easy for people to overlook or completely forget what makes you valuable. Therefore, one of the most powerful actions you can take when you feel disrespected is not to demand acknowledgement, but to focus your efforts on nurturing yourself. This doesn't need to be done in grand or dramatic ways. Instead, it can be through small daily practices that restore your self-respect and gradually change how others perceive you. For instance, it might start with the way you dress each morning, not to impress anyone, but simply because you want to feel put together as you go about your day. It could involve choosing to eat meals at the dining table rather than in front of the television, or keeping your living space tidy and organized, not for guests, but for your own sense of tranquility. It might even look like committing to a daily walk, listening to music that uplifts you, or reading books that expand your mind. These aren't luxuries. They're signals to yourself, and eventually to those around you, that you value your own life, time, and presence. Take the example of Richard, a 75-year-old man who had dedicated most of his life to caring for others. When his family began treating him as if he had nothing left to offer, he didn't confront them or complain. Instead, he focused on taking better care of himself. He got a new haircut, began attending community center classes twice a week, and gradually his energy transformed. He started smiling more, speaking differently, and when his family noticed this change, so did their tone toward him. They didn't articulate it outright, but they began to listen more intently when he spoke. This shift occurred not because he demanded their attention, but because he stopped presenting himself as someone who had given up. When you choose to show up for yourself, those around you have no option but to take notice. It's not about flaunting anything. It's about treating yourself with enough care that others begin to wonder why. Why are you standing taller? Why do you seem more content? That curiosity can evolve into admiration, which eventually leads to respect, even from those who may have previously dismissed you. The core of this is that these routines are not meant for them. They are for you. The moment you begin treating yourself with the care and attention you've always hoped to receive from others, you will no longer depend on their validation. Ironically, that's when it begins to flow in your direction, not out of obligation, but because they are genuinely inspired by your transformation. Now, let's move on to our 6th strategy, seeking strength and support beyond your family circle. When respect is lacking within the family, it can feel as though your world is shrinking, as if those you were supposed to rely on have withdrawn or shut down. In that loneliness, it's all too easy to start believing that there is something wrong with you, or that there's nowhere else to turn. However, here's something that many people overlook. One of the quickest ways to restore your sense of self-worth isn't by trying to fix your family. It's by forging connections outside of them. Friends, neighbors, community groups, and even friendly strangers can provide the kindness and support you need. While these individuals may not share your bloodline, they can still nourish your spirit. The reality is, many older adults tend to shrink their social circles over time. Children move away, old friends drift apart, and without realizing it, you may find yourself leaning more heavily on the few family members who remain close, even if they're not treating you well. This over-reliance can become emotional quicksand. The good news is that it's never too late to expand your circle. Whether it's joining a weekly class, attending a faith group, participating in a walking club, or simply greeting a familiar face at the grocery store. These small interactions outside your home can help refill the emotional well that disrespect has drained. Take the story of Teresa, an 82-year-old woman who had nearly given up on receiving warmth at home. Her son rarely visited, and her grandchildren were polite but distant. One day, she decided to volunteer at a local community kitchen twice a month, not because she had an abundance of time, but because she needed to feel useful again. Within a few weeks, her demeanor transformed. Her laughter returned, her posture improved, and when her son finally visited, he remarked, "You seem different, Mom." Her life had expanded beyond just his opinion. These outside connections are not replacements for family. They serve as reinforcements. They remind you of how much you still have to offer and how fulfilling conversations can be. Your wisdom still holds value. When your identity becomes too intertwined with individuals who don't respect you, it's easy to lose sight of your worth. But once you start placing your energy in spaces where it is welcomed, your confidence will begin to rebuild itself quietly, steadily, and without needing to apologize. Moreover, when your family observes that you're no longer waiting for their approval, that you're investing your time in people who genuinely value you, they'll start to reassess the situation. It may not happen all at once, but over time, the message becomes clear. You're not stuck, you're not desperate, and you're not living on their terms. Now, let's delve into our final strategy. Reframing disrespect as a reflection of others, not a measure of your worth. When someone in your family disrespects you, it's easy to take it personally. You might think it reflects your worth, your failures, or the kind of parent or sibling you've been. However, the truth is often quite different. Disrespect seldom arises from clarity. It usually stems from confusion, projection, or emotional pain.